Here.
Don't forget to turn on your microphone like I just did. And also, I'm just gonna, do we need to re-record the attendance since the microphones were on? Okay. All right, we're gonna disconnect.
Do it again.
And yeah, and that's a big reminder to turn your microphones on every time. Otherwise, people that are attending on Zoom cannot hear you. Absolutely cannot hear you. All right, so we have Chairman Pattershot,
Here.
Commissioner Jacobs,
Here.
Vice Chairman Zelinski is absent, Secretary Moon,
Here.
Commissioner Donaldson.
Here.
We also have in attendance City Council Liaison, Council Member Kate Pashon Hellman, Staff Liaisons Carlos Trejo, Director of Planning and Community Development, as well as myself, Dawn Doty, Senior Planner. And I'll hand it back to the Chairman.
All right, thank you, Ms. Doty. Now for public comments, I see we have the usual cast of characters. We have no one in attendance. Ms. Doty, is there anyone online begging to ask a question?
Not at this time, sir.
Okay, moving right along. EDC 5-year economic plan, of which we have a freshly pressed copy in front of us. Ms. Doty?
I was going to do it from the podium, but I think this might be easier. Okay. And sorry, guys. Here we go. So EDC, since we have some new members and liaison today, our procedures and responsibilities. So this EDC is one of the 3 commissions called out by code. We have, well, I mean, I don't want to read what's on the screen, but we do follow Robert's Rules of Orders, and our basic responsibilities are to advise the city council vis-a-vis economic development. Within our packages, there are some more details on these, but I won't get into that. Our presentations, we give staff gives an overview, and we sometimes welcome presenters. Our previous meeting, our last meeting was Greg Yowitz, where he went over the Olive Crossing development. We do all of our voting by roll call, and we record all of our meetings. They are located on our website under the Agenda Center. We will not have any meeting minutes tonight, but we will someday have meeting minutes for EDC. And those will also be on our website. Live streams sometimes experience delays. So if there is an online participant, we ask for them to raise their hand, which is in the bottom center of your screen, a little black button with a little hand on it. But if you do give us your patience, we appreciate it. We, like the city council, we have an opportunity to welcome public comments, which Rod actually already went through. And it is also limited to 3 minutes. So I kind of launched right into the background of our economic development plan, our pursuit of our economic development plan, because we have our new 2024 comprehensive plan, which detailed in Chapter 2 in Goal E to proactively lead economic development, attract and retain desirable businesses, grow tax base, increase workforce diversity, encourage private business. Very basic, but there's a lot of nuances in there. We have previous plans, so I'm not seeing that it went the way I wanted to. But one of our oldest plans, besides our 2006 comprehensive plan, is our 5-year economic development plan. There is a copy in your packets in front of you of the 5-year economic development plan. It's very detailed in terms of strategies, goals, objectives, and tasks that have been, previously recommended for EDC to do, things that we have done and can proceed to do. So, oh, and where did all of those lovely, don't tell me it just chopped up my presentation. So, 1 second. Unless there were some pages taken out on purpose. So, our current business license year, we have 271 individual businesses that have already submitted their business licenses. This is approximately 85% of our business universe as we know it. There are the 15% that are stragglers, as they were, or as we are saying, because I'm very purposefully and intentionally trying to get a hold of them, trying to contact them by any means possible. Did you?
And Don, just give a little bit of feedback through our municipal code. A majority of businesses, and this is almost universal throughout the state of Missouri, we have the ability to require a business license. I've heard it interpreted 2 different ways, whether it's a tax or it's a fee. There is an important distinction between the two, and I haven't figured out yet. I've heard differently from attorneys of what exactly it is, because a tax, anything that's adjusted has to go through a vote. A fee is just approved by council in there. So the state statutes identify, and also the state requires business licenses from a variety of businesses. All businesses are registered to the Secretary of State, and then there's a different section where you can obtain your state license. In there, you register your EIN number, and that's how they know and follow you through the IRS and what you're doing. City of Olivet, we require qualified businesses to obtain a license from the city, and we issue those licenses annually. We used to do it by calendar year from January to December, but after the pandemic and in an effort to help businesses and everything that was kind of chaotic at that time, we changed it to go from May to May, or to some extent in there. That's been good. It also falls with our fiscal year in there. And then businesses were getting confused because at the end of December, your business license was due, your liquor license was due, you were also getting all your stuff with the IRS and the state and all that. So this was an effort to try to help businesses and kind of minimize some of the confusion in what this process is. One thing I'll note is that there are a variety of businesses that the state has exempted in there. So this does not reflect that the city only has 271 businesses. We have 271 businesses with licenses. There's a lot of sizable businesses that are exempt.
We actually do capture most of our exempt businesses currently. This was not always the case.
Correct.
But with Old Bonham School and the number of teachers that they employ, it is it's an interesting question and reporting at the least. The fact that they don't have to send us any money makes them not mind as much. However, there are a number of businesses that are exempt, and it's hard for to work with those that are exempt on their reporting at all. They feel they are exempt, period. They are exempt from reporting it. They are exempt from reporting the number of employees or really any information about their business. However, our code is kind of clear on, to do business, you must obtain a business license. We have different types of licenses. This page here is a breakdown by the business sector. This does not take into consideration our quadrants or our business license types. This is what they have reported to us are their major two-digit NAICS code sectors. So that's like the most basic major heading for in which all of the different types of businesses fall under. So it is interesting to see how many professional and scientific technical businesses are here. They make up 17% of our total businesses. On the next, is not the next page. This is another one dedicated to our number of businesses and where they are spread out. The commercial quadrants, that is also, this entire page is dedicated to number of businesses. We have, or in the past, had a more difference, more manufacturers and fewer, well, there's about 20 merchants missing there, but our services are doing really well. As far as manufacturers go, there are a number of businesses that had, or that had manufacturing aspects to their business that they're not really doing anymore. And there are other manufacturers that we haven't captured yet, like Emerson Fisher Rosemont. They will be in there as a manufacturer. So that will boost those numbers as at least for number of manufacturers. Now I got a little cute with the combining of the graphs to show where things are by their business type. The only thing that I couldn't really get the total numbers or the number totals then, but they are here on this page. Yeah, just because a business is a retail type doesn't, or well, I'm not, okay, that's a bad example. Just because a business is in a more something that you might assume is manufacturing, it might be under a merchant or a service. So I wouldn't take, this a lack of service or a lack of any one particular type of business as a like an absence or something that's missing. It's simply just what is. So then we go to employment. And do we have any questions about the number of businesses, either about the locations or types?
Looks like there's some businesses in homes here,
Mm.
but what is the threshold? Is anybody who has a small business running out of their home, let's say an LLC, supposed to be registered with their business license?
They are. It depends on if they're operating their business from their home or if they're working for a company from their home.
Mhm.
So if you are just working for your company, that
Yeah.
is not their company, that company operating out of their home. So we do not count, people who work at home, but we do say if you have we have restricted businesses, so only certain kinds of businesses can be home-based businesses. If there is a cleaning business and he or she meets all the criteria, they can be located within their home and operate their business from their home. They have to meet certain criteria for that. But we don't have a cap on like the number of home-based businesses that we can have in town. And that number for home-based businesses has grown really kind of exponentially as
Yeah.
people have been looking for alternative forms of income.
And is there data sharing with the state? Like if they're registered with the state, have an EIN?
Yeah.
Do you get any type of info from the state saying these are how many people we have registered for your city?
No, we don't. That would be very efficient.
Yeah.
But I mean, less jokey, it would be the way that they define their businesses does not exactly match up with ours. So it could be a good starting point, like if we were doing like a search and find on every single business. And that could be something that we need to consider if we find that there are a large number of home-based businesses that are not reporting. That would definitely be a way to go about it, would be to get, and you can track that through sales tax receipts. I believe that there's a number of things that, in Magic that, our accounting department, like, so that, Darren has mentioned previously that if we didn't, if the retail numbers weren't matching up, that we could look at those sales, numbers that were reported. As far as the locations of businesses, that would probably be something I could pull through the Secretary of State. As far as how I would do a bulk data, that just would be like an hour.
What is the,
But it's gotta exist since it's in the database.
what is the contribution of margin, not margin, revenue from our business license payments that we receive? Like, what percentage of the budget is fed by that business license?
So as far as the percent of our budget, I did not prepare anything on that. I do have some slides later on here dedicated to revenue in terms of, but I'll get to those after I do the employment. So I'm sorry, I'll get back to that. All right, thank you. So employment leads, from an economic developer standpoint, employment and encouraging employment is a very big goal. Noticing that and you may already notice that our top number of businesses and our top employing businesses are not the same. So we have more professional, scientific businesses, healthcare, etc., other services. Construction is down here at number 5. So there's only 24 construction businesses, but they make up 25% of our employment, which is interesting to say the least. Although, that professional, scientific, and technical services, that does, they've still got a nice, healthy 12%, still a quarter of our employees. That is just reported. I have a little stack of unprocessed business licenses on my desk already that have some heavy employers that I would have really loved to have in these numbers. And I had intended to look at the like restaurants, all like limited and full service eating establishments. It was difficult to assign or to like analyze their numbers, considering how we keep our records separate from merchants and service. But to see the difference as far as your number of businesses does not mean that it has the most amount of employees, I guess is the moral of that story. We do have a lot in retail trade, but you could say that we're not, incredibly heavily leveraged on that. And keep in mind that 71 is where all your restaurants are actually going to be. Or no, 72 is where your restaurants are going to be. So we have a pretty healthy 7% employment there. Now to revenue.
Sorry, can I ask a question real quick?
Yes, please.
Under that accommodations and food services, does that include the accommodations? Is that like Airbnbs?
Not specifically. As far it would be everything that's under the 7,200s, right? Or 72,000s. So hotels would be included. Airbnb revenue would not necessarily be, or would not be captured, because we don't have an Airbnb business license. So all of this data is related to business licenses that I've, pressed into the system. And so truly, I'm kind of regurgitating just what the numbers in the system give me. But since we don't have an Airbnb business license, we don't have anybody reporting or we don't have anybody paying for that.
Got it.
And that would be interesting to see, if Airbnbs, if they would be regulated as, a business and have a business license associated with that. I don't know that, certainly our current breakdown of service table A, service table B, we don't have any, it's not a slot. But, it's something that we might, that might need to be considered by council. Should we regulate them? So back to revenue, we have currently, and I do say this currently because of that small stack of unprocessed business licenses that are on my desk. The McDonald's one could really make a little dent in this somewhere, because you have your total amount paid or collected by quadrant and then by type. Our merchants licenses are almost always going to bring in more revenue because they are based on a percentage of sales. And manufacturing is as well. And I think I kind of cruised past that slide, or it's ahead of us. Nope, here it is. So here, again, got cute with the bar graphs. So the difference, or why manufacturers are such a small percentage of our number of businesses, but yet they have kind of a significant amount, in terms of revenue. It's because it is a percentage of the sales. A $50 minimum. There are plenty of businesses that are at the $50 minimum. They don't make enough sales in the year. They don't make more than $50,000 in sales per year. So that's kind of like the cap. And then fees, as far as fees by category and type, I'm happy to go through all of those with you. The only one that has a fee associated with the amount of employees are the categories on service table B. And you can see this one is a screwy bar graph, because I had to bump the manufacturers up to the front for their smaller contribution to the revenue. And it's slid down quite a bit over the years, but it's something that we have definitely still made up in for merchants. As far as the amount collected, this is a little distribution map. All of the dots are in the same exact spot as they were on the zoning map. This is just not a heat map, but yeah, I guess technically, heat map, by red being your highest revenue contributors. And did you have a question?
I do have a question, sorry. Just remind me. I do know this, I just can't find it in here. Dealman Price is exactly where? Like, what is that area?
Let me get you back up to, see, I knew that this would be a good map to have here.
So this is the area like behind CVS and all that?
Yeah.
Right?
So
Okay.
do you see where my little,
Uh-huh.
yeah.
But
my
that's where
guy
that is, right?
Yes.
Okay.
And
All
so,
right.
and then Dealman Rock is.
Right.
right
I knew
here.
that. I used to have property back there.
Well, it does include this area
Mhm.
here.
Mhm.
So this Price, Dealman Price, and the break of Olive is, they are usually in the CORs, but
Right.
it's not
necessarily.
I just couldn't figure out where that was, so thank you.
Yeah, no,
Appreciate it.
no, you're good. And yeah, please, guys, throw up a hand. I'm so happy to get to questions. So, and I did have, yeah. So as far as the top, revenue, contributing companies follow a lot of, along the lines of the most or amount annual gross sales. We do not have annual gross sales for all businesses. Only merchants or manufacturers, because those are the only businesses that report their annual gross sales. Service businesses, like, any salon or 314 Sports, well, no, that's a merchant. But like, I'm trying
Nail
to think
salon?
of, yeah, like the nail salon. If they do not sell products,
Ah,
they are not a merchant. If you're going to get your nails done
they sell polish.
and they don't sell polish or any other things, which there's plenty of places that don't, then it is purely a service business. And so the rate or the fees are just, so completely different.
Food is still a merchant, right?
Food is, yes. Were there any, did you have one?
Why is our revenue falling?
Our revenue falling as far at, we have lost some major contributors to our merchant's license. I did have, I have a list, I don't have it in front of me. But I went back through every year to see where those numbers were coming from. Enterprise, they had a very large, merchant bill that they paid. And, let's see. US Bank, they had a service license. It was a larger amount than a normal service license. However, I wouldn't say that that's one of the, the big reasons for the dip. Those are two huge employment losses, and we don't honestly know if Enterprise had, the 1,500 jobs or 1,600 jobs that they had reported to us, at one point in time. It never really seemed like there were that many people that were actually physically there, as far as cars in the parking lot or people, going out to lunch. There just didn't seem to be as much foot traffic there. Emerson, since they've come into town, and boy, have they been active. Not just in the city, which is really great to see, parks, everybody pretty much knows who they are, whereas that was it was not, I want to say difficult, but it was always kind of catch as catch can. Did they call the person that you had given them? Did their, paths ever really actually cross? No, Emerson got a hold of them and they are doing street, cleanups and all kinds of things. But also the businesses have said, we see those employees coming here and eating. So you can really feel a business presence, whether it's 250 or 1,500.
Yeah, I guess that's my point because, the genesis of my question is that in the last 5 years, we've actually seen a tremendous growth in business on the strip and by the number of businesses we have, but our revenue from business licenses is falling. And so either we're not capturing all the data, which is potentially, or it's not included, or the way we're calculating the fees associated with our license isn't the most accurate to absorb the amount of revenue we should from what we have now on the corridor.
Now-
Or the mix of businesses is changing too.
Which means maybe the calculation of how we're creating our fee structure needs to be
Well,
revisited.
how much, what's our gross receipts in terms of business license?
185,000. It
Yeah.
shows. It's,
Where are you looking? Right.
it was on the Ford slide, right?
Oh,
Yeah,
got it,
go
got it,
back
got it. Okay,
To the bar one,
Okay,
with the,
got it.
yeah, because when you
No, if
consider
you go to
that,
the Ford, sorry,
Yeah.
Ford, the yearly trend one is the one up. Oh, next one.
the
Oh,
3D
the other one.
yearly trend one.
Yeah.
Right there.
That one,
Yeah.
got it. I didn't read
Yeah.
the stuff along.
So the following one even shows them additive like, together, and the numbers are going down, which is like the opposite of what I would expect to see. Like right there in the
Oh,
top
I
left.
see where you are. Okay.
okay, yeah.
In the
Okay,
last
so-
few years, we've seen all this growth, but now we're not seeing the revenue tied to. Now, again, this is maybe a rounding error when it comes to our annual budget, but still not the right direction you would expect to see.
Well, to answer your original question is what percentage of our total budget is business license? I'd say
Rounding error
less-
was my guess.
Yeah, rounding error, yeah.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
my guess. But still,
So,
directionally. you'd
I
expect-
will say that, there are 15% that remain uncaptured. So that is at least one reason why that 2026 number is so much lower. I do expect to capture more than that.
What is the average? Because I remember years back, the average capture rate was even lower than 85%. Especially during COVID, we basically didn't have anyone pay, it seemed like.
So I've had more businesses this year catch up in arrears than any other year. I've put for
Yeah,
some
which is
great
great.
effort.
Again, which is why these numbers are the opposite of what you'd expect. I think.
Is that,
Will 2026 grow as we keep getting that whittling down 15%, other reasons that?
Yes, I do hope that, it remains to be seen what Aldi will do next year as
Right.
far as the retail sales and amount. It will remain like, so for a lot of our brand new businesses, because of the reporting, which is way back on like one of the first slides. The reporting term is that January 2024 through December 2024. So we're backwards looking. If they weren't open during that time, then the sales that they would report on May 15th, 2025, if they weren't open, there would be no sales. So we're lagging behind those new businesses and seeing the revenue come in.
So our 2027 numbers should be really strong.
I would put a caveat on that because the bars you see here are kind of reflective of state receipts. We've seen like a peak throughout the state in terms of sales tax revenue collection. And that's impacted, the region and all of the other munis around here. And all of it has been in pretty good shape, and we still are. But I think you'll find that that's kind of reflective of what the state has been noting during this budget year, that sales tax revenues are not coming at the same rate as they were before, whether that's a product of the economy or we're getting out of the pandemic and going back to normal. There's different things in there. And I think that it's an excellent question and things to look at. But I think when we look at it here, maintaining, that, they're still pretty close. I know it's 187 to 208, but we're keeping that pace of those pandemic years were really good in there. And again, there's a lot of unknowns, and we'll talk about the budget further down. A lot of unknowns that are kind of coming around in there. And but it's a good question. And then on the second thing, we'll talk about it later too. We'll traditionally either August or October, we'll have Mr. Mann, our finance director, kind of talk to the commission, and he gives a pretty good overview of that aspect of it. And then the overall receipts represent 9% of the entire budget, of the general budget,
The license receipt.
of the license receipts.
Oh, so it's not a rounding error.
9%.
Nine.
Now, remember, licenses are different from sales tax receipts.
Okay.
Okay,
This is the licenses, though.
this is the licenses.
Which are based on sales, but. there's
Some of them
more.
are, some of them aren't.
Oh, that's
This,
good.
this is also the revenues, the amount that they have paid us.
Right.
So it's not their annual gross receipts or anything like that.
Actually, something doesn't make sense. You have that look on your face that I.
If it's
9%,
9%,
now,
that means the
you-
budget's $2 million a year. That's not.
Yeah, I mean, when you take into account, property tax payments and everything, we're talking gross receipts of our entire budget.
That's
And
it.
a lot of that is school district that we don't get, et cetera.
Correct. I mean, I don't know. I don't think that's what you, but our budget is, for the last year was, 2,725,000. That's for our general budget
That's for planning, not for this city.
for the city as a whole was 2.7 million.
And Darren did give a presentation to EDC in January. As far as the percentage of the budget, Kate has the budget document open from city council. So did you want to?
So I guess maybe we're looking at different numbers, because right now I'm looking at what came through from Darren. I don't expect you to pull it up, but it's on page 59 of 140 of the budget document that was presented at the last council meeting.
Yeah. And you would have the current one. I'm looking at last year's.
So at least for this one, so this calls out business licenses specifically in the remainder classification for our general fund revenue. And for the general fund revenue for the 2026 budget, that's 10,545,000. So if that's the general fund revenue, and of that percentage, if we're looking at roughly 200,000, then that's about 1.9% of the general fund revenue. So, and maybe we're pulling from different
I think
numbers.
you're right.
but-
And it is so, as far as, what I've pulled out of the system, so are strictly from the business licenses, and Darren has more information than I have, as far as the budget goes. Just pulling the amounts, that was all the amounts that were there. If there were things that were missing or data that didn't get counted, or if, so Darren's is also by the fiscal year, and ours is by the business license year. So it's not gonna completely match up.
Right.
So it's the ones that are expiring in 2026, Darren would have never had those numbers because we've only started collecting them. I mean, in May. So, there's kind of no way, or he would have been operating off the 2025 numbers.
Well, that's
Does that
fine
make
too. I
sense?
mean, the
Oh, I
2025
was-
numbers are just under 10 million
Yeah.
for the general fund revenue.
I just
as
wanted to
well.
give a reason
Yeah.
for the inconsistency, because I don't want it to, feel like a bait and switch, when you're looking at the budget documents as opposed to the business license cycle stuff. They are different time periods. I went for kind of brevity and speed for our business licenses. So it is slightly different. But off of revenue to the annual gross sales, our largest sales reporters, again, the only businesses that report their annual gross sales are merchants and manufacturers. The top businesses are listed there. HDIS is on the top of all the list. Pretty much. And manufacturing, for being such a small percentage to have a nice annual gross sales amount. The Dealman Price is still the main money there. That's Schnucks that is reporting. And that Dealman Price as that big red dot. And then that is all I have for that portion. Any questions on the business licenses reported Bueller?
What is your goal with the business licenses? You know,
100% total domination.
yeah,
I really would, there are businesses that have simply taken, that connection and then boom, I'm getting their filings, a month ahead of time. So, it could be as simple as that with some of these.
yeah.
Other ones, they may never, it could be something that we have to take further. As far as what my goals are, truly, if I can have all the data, if I can have everybody reporting all of their data honestly, and I can regurgitate that information honestly to you all, that would make me extremely happy.
Yeah,
Other than that, I want to see our businesses do well.
The
right.
types of data that you're collecting, is that what was shown in the slides? So like employee numbers and gross sales, are there other data points that you collect that weren't represented in the slides?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Is there like a online where we can find like what businesses, like a survey or whatever it is that they fill out that? just-
So, I can give you an application which gives you an idea of what we collect. As far as things that I didn't show that we collect still, like, so I didn't get into the nth degree of the business sectors because they all break out. Salient points are your employment amount and annual sales, but there are in the quadrants. Hmm.
Do we collect any data from businesses, in terms of like feedback for the city?
No, but it has been, discussed. We do not have, any current or like a survey or something like that could be easily done with our ArcGIS software. We would be able to, with the data we collect from the business licenses, be able to do it digitally. It's a cost factor, but yeah, we have, as far as like what we collect, there's a lot more that we could do with it. There's not as much that is easy to display, as far as, charts and graphs. It's just not easy to look at. But as far as, also keeping the business's information somewhat obscure. So I did, list the top 5 businesses for your, all of the different aspects that we looked at. However, I didn't put in the values for any of those because, it looks different, when you see that, that this company made $63 million in sales, well, what does that mean really? It only relevant that they're in the top 5, so you can get a lot more detail, but is that detail helpful? Is it something people need to know? Can you convey it without giving out all the information? So I'm sorry, I may not.
I would say this kind of discussion is important because it actually gives us a snapshot of what we are and what we're good at, apparently. So the idea is, what do we need more of? What do we need less of? And how we can basically incentivize people to do what we want them to do. And that's kind of why we're kind of looking at this whole thing. I think the caveat to that is that why we collect business fees and licenses, probably because we can.
Because the code.
Because
tells
the thing is, Kate, you mentioned feedback. We've done some outreach and stuff like that. Actually, we were, over the last couple of years, we were tasked with just going out, just scribbling a few notes when we talked to someone and, hearing the complaints. And it was difficult to tabulate all that different stuff because everybody's got a different take on what's good, bad, whatever about the city themselves, how they fit in. But it's kind of like, yeah, we collect this money, we utilize it. We don't necessarily utilize it for those businesses.
Mm.
So, and that'd be my only comment here with regards to that. I mean, but collecting the data is, important, having a good overview of how it makes us look.
I have been with with all the mailings and things, I'm getting a better sense of our lost businesses, things that were in the system that didn't need to be, but also, offboarding. Why did they leave? Did they have constraints, in their physical space? Could they just simply not expand on location type of a thing?
And a lot of those questions, we can't do anything about. And-
Right,
and
it's
actually,
always
for that,
after the fact.
And I would say, well, no.
Or not always, but
Well, I'm saying with regards to making a decision as to where to locate, business licenses are kind of after the fact. It's kind of like, oh, I'm gonna go to Olivet and do this. Oh, I need a business license. Okay, fine. Hopefully I get something for it, sort of thing.
truly, you have to have your commercial occupancy inspection certificate and business before you can have your business license. So
Yeah, no doubt.
even even if it's a home-based businesses, we don't have an inspection, but there is a process for that. The questionnaires and surveys, IEDC, as I had mentioned, that's International Economic Development Council. They literally write the books on these. And surveys are one of their top recommendations for working with your existing businesses. And in IEDC's opinion, existing businesses, that is where you need to concentrate your efforts, because 80% of businesses, they grow from within. We certainly need to be connecting with them to make sure that they don't leave. Can we actually affect their decision to leave? That's another question. But connecting with them would be a step further than we already
Yeah,
are.
and actually, that's a good discussion. Just in the essence of moving on, I think we've had a good discussion about this, and it's food for thought about considering incentives of the things we need to be, the things that we need to do to attract the right kind of businesses and keep the ones that we have. I mean, we've done some things, and it's very difficult sometimes to get businesses to respond, although they do have their druthers about what we're doing right, whatever. But yeah, just kind of moving along, think about things in the future that, we can bring up and say, okay, this is what we can do in terms of a survey. But I'll always well done, and appreciate all the detail and data.
Well, thank you.
I have
just-
one last
Yeah.
thought, sorry.
Yeah.
I would love to, whenever the finance person wants to present the structure behind how we create our business license fees, I would like to have a better understanding of what that is.
Yeah.
And whether or not that can be adjusted, because like a Murphy company who has 500 employees, our biggest employer, not saying that they should pay the greatest business license fee, but I would just like to understand why, and is it malleable, and can we show revenue growth into the future? Because our costs aren't going down as a city, so we support, the reason they pay the fee is because we provide them services in our community, our fire department, and so on and so
Well,
forth.
they also pay property tax.
Yeah, I get it, I get it.
Yeah, right, which is a huge amount more than,
It is though an afterthought. The business license as a
Well, yeah.
business owner is an afterthought. They're like, oh yeah, I gotta pay that $310
yeah.
Oh.
Well, it's not that small for Murphy.
for, or whatever, or maybe it is because they weren't on the top 5, but they're the number 1 employer.
Oh, God, I see what you're pointing.
So
So it is very possible. It would be, if it's a service table A and they don't pay an employee fee, then they don't pay an exponential amount more for their extra, or for their, large number of employees.
which is something, what I'm suggesting in the future, we revisit the structure behind how the fees are calculated. That's all.
And so,
That's a good point.
as Carlos was mentioning earlier, the fees it has gone back and forth between, is it a fee or is it a tax? A fee is something the council can affect. A tax is something the voters, or that has to go to the voters.
So then I suggest it remains a fee and something that council could then review in its wisdom. And that's our job, is to recommend to council
Right.
what to review. And I think a declining revenue on business licenses with all these businesses growing doesn't make sense. So our
Well-
recommendation to council would be to review this structure.
Yeah, and if and when we review it, I think we should also start with the question of what is our goal of getting to 100% or having business licenses, period? Is it to maximize revenue? That's my assumption. 2% is not nothing. But also, is it to gather this data? How valuable is the data? What are our trade-offs between the people responding and the level of fees we, are requiring them to pay? Or what is their, friction with those fees? What do the fees do? I assume, again, it's an afterthought, but does it have any impact on people wanting to come or staying? My assumption there is probably not. But maybe it's me being new to this, but don't quite would like to start with what is our ultimate goal of a fee or a license in general.
I agree. That's good.
And we've done
A
some
broader
cursory,
discussion.
we've done some cursory research, it's raining, on, what other communities do. So it's definitely, we've been looking at how we compare, to see if we need to make any changes, like immediately type of a thing. We haven't seen anything like that, but it's definitely, something to align our, create that goal and align therein.
Yeah, and we'll bring, it's been something we've been kind of progressing or working towards to do. We have the data of what other communities charge in there, and we can bring those for comparisons. Several of them go by square footage, which stays consistent. I'll give you a little bit of history. I didn't come across the collection of the business license fees till about like 2010, 2012, when I saw somebody had submitted the form to the wrong building and the data that was collected to calculate the fees. And as a planner, you're like, wow, I didn't know there was that many people there and all that. And we had all this data, but it was just looked at it was taken in from an administrative reception and collected and put in the bank. And that's all they were, they send out the notices, they collected the funds, put it in the bank, and realized that we had tons and tons of data in there. So that became helpful to be able to identify the businesses and then kind of look at, different things that kind of popped out. You saw here that of the 5 biggest sales tax contributors, only one's on Olive. We have these treasure trove of businesses in our industrial parks that are not big boxes in there, but have some of the highest sales in there that we collect. And it's understanding those businesses. And we're small enough and personable enough that we now know many of these, owners like Starbeam and the Murphy Company and all that. But then we saw some of the other things. We also did try at one point, like we would send out the application along with a little business newsletter to kind of inform people what this money was and how it contributed to the budget and all that. And it worked for a while, but we don't do that as much anymore. We may go back or look at something like that. But the other thing is we found, some of the inconsistencies of the process and it not being very equitable. So we will have, like, for instance, a construction company that maybe offices are run out of the house and they pay a flat rate. And a construction company that is in an industrial park that has in the tens of employees, they pay the same flat rate as the 2-person firm. And we started noticing these inequities and all there. And then we started noticing what other communities are doing by going through where there was a square footage, the, the sales tax or percentage of the sales tax is always great because you get a percentage as long as the sales tax is going up. But we did hit, the past 3 years where we kind of peaked at all that. So one of our goals, and we've talked about it through this commission over time, is reassessing that. I'll note, and I know this is not what you guys intended, but it is a collection form that all municipalities have. We're not the only ones that do it, and it's pretty common in there. Is we have the opportunity to do so, just like we have for building permits. It's not like your fee to the building permit isn't gonna, then I'm gonna turn around and give it back to you in there. It's all about it's a process of in there. And I think Councilman Pashon Hellman is correct. The overall budget is 10.5 million in revenue or around there. And this represents about 2% of our collection based on that number. And there, we'll have Darren come in. He's been one that's been kind of advocating for making some of these changes. And I think this kind of helps build that platform where he comes in. And you guys got to see him. Some of you got to see him last year in there, and he's really good in terms of how those projections are made and talking about numbers, and he enjoys this stuff. So I think it'll be pretty exciting.
Yes, he does. Great. All right. Moving right along. Unless if there are any other comments, questions, concerns. No. Distressed and underperforming parcels.
So again, I'm going to take this from Don, trying to take a look at different aspects. And now that we're under a new comprehensive plan and looking at ways to improve the corridor and look at that. This is going to be like bringing this to you as a first time. We had something similar to this, I think about 12 plus years ago, where we had a map and identified potential redevelopment areas. That was incorporated in our old comprehensive plan in there. Now that we have a new one kind of talking about these parcels, these are the ones that keep me up at night, because the market is changing, things are happening, and there's also expectations that are coming in. So I'm going to take you through a couple of properties just to kind of create some discussion or get some feedback in there. And these are all along Olive, and I'll explain why I identified these in there. So we'll start on the right-hand side there by I-170. And the next slide, Don, will show this apartment complex. Since the entrance to the Olivet, coming off of 170. It's been there for, I think they were built in the 50s or 60s in there. I believe there's maybe about 50 units plus or minus in that, but all these properties are now under the ownership of a company called Quick Trip, who's also bought some adjacent parcels in there. All of it is in a good position. Those properties are zoned SR, single family residential. And if you were looking to do something outside of residential use, you would have to rezone. And that puts the council in the lead of making that determination. Our comprehensive plan kind of looks at this corner for future kind of mixed use development. So it's not the goal is not to get a single type of user or a box development. In addition to that, the city owns a strip of right-of-way that actually is the city's. So they control whether they want to be part of the cell or not in there. So the city's kind of positioned well. They've owned this for...
Since I've been here anyway.
Yeah.
Quick Trip has?
Mm-hmm. And they have a couple other parcels in there. The position it puts me in is pushing them for maintenance. I mean, they just can't hold on to these properties. We've had some issues with some of the single family homes that you see kind of in the back of there, and then the intent that we want them to, this is our interest. We want a better, we want a better presence when people come into all of that. So it becomes this push-pull thing, because our goal is now to push them to fix up these properties. I think there's
people living in those homes?
yes,
And in the apartments?
yes.
Okay.
Oh, I think they own 3 or 4 homes, and to the best of my knowledge, 2 are vacant, and they've been vacant for years.
Oh, my.
Actually, the ownership by QT, was that about the same time that Knowles wanted to do something on the other side of
It's
Olive?
possible. I know
That they've
that
owned it that
somewhere,
long.
we found out like about 5 years ago, I think it was, that they had acquired a parcel.
Sometimes it's difficult because there's layers of
Yes.
corporate ownership, et cetera.
I weeded through that when I got here.
Mhm.
That was
Wow.
my first thing.
So that's why we can't, I mean, the ownership is public information. It's not, but we have sat with them and kind of explained what we just explained to you, that it's zoned residential. Our comprehensive plan is pretty well set in terms of what the expectations are. The city owns property in those grounds, and we, while we can't tell them what we believe the council would do or so, but that they need to be aware of those aspects of it. Now we're kind of looking at it as like, hey guys, you guys, as we've gotten to the Irvington place, the the crossings, they need to start investing in their property or fixing, maintaining and fixing up. So the next three, or they're going to be four here, no, three here, and you'll see the little map there on the upper right-hand corner. They're all south of Olive, and they're all these, nice little structures that are along Olive, but their value and future use is pretty minimal given what somebody would have to do. The first one is what we used to call the Turek Building at Dolores and Olive. It was used for office or personal or office type of functions. And that's our goal. And there's poor circulation, there's poor parking, and it's a lot of building. And it's kind of like a remnant piece. When they were building the Shops at Price Crossing, we tried to get the developer to go all the way to Dolores to get rid of that building, knowing that we would get stuck with a building that would be difficult to kind of redevelop in that process. 9306, which you go up two parcels down, is a little law office. And you can see in the Google Street View, there's a little tarp there. We've been on them about what's going on there, what he covering needs to be fixed up. And they're to a point that we're close to, if it's not done within a reasonable time frame, we have no other, we've been trying to work with them unless we have to get to a point that we have to issue citations. And we try to avoid that in that process, because then it becomes a court type of issue. But the building needs a lot of TLC in there. And there is parking in the back. We do know that other adjacent property owners have been looking at the parcel in there, and we'll see where it goes. But we're trying to get it, keep an eye both from a maintenance perspective, and then pushing that maintenance. What does that do, and what does that open, whether positive or negative? If you go two parcels further, you'll see the dentist building, and you can see again the Google captures it great. The maintenance of the west side of the building, and you can see the paint, the exposure, the lack of paint, and now I think there's some bubbling in the siding too. So we've made some outreach to them about the need to.
Is that
you know,
building still in use as a dentist office?
Yes.
Seriously? Okay.
So
And the law offices are still in use too?
yes.
I drove
'Cause
by
it-
there today. I was actually going to bring this building up tonight because I was like, what is going on there?
So
It looks like it got hit by the tornado.
yeah, and
It really did.
with
I
that
mean,
tarp,
stuff
and
hanging off of it that you don't see in this picture.
then you can see. I mean, I think. Well, for the most part, I think you can see some of the pines back there, but I'm not sure that one is one of the full dead trees.
I'm pretty sure
immediately
that
behind.
that little tree there,
Which
on
picture
the,
are we looking
on
at?
the 9318.
Mm.
At the dentist's office is dead.
Yeah, next to the dentist, I'm pretty sure that that tree fell, or at least one of the trees was taken out in the big storm.
So
But yeah, no, it has looked that way for a while.
the
Carlos?
complexity with these sites. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Sorry, I was just gonna say, that you had mentioned earlier that there's hesitancy to offer a citation. Can you explain a little bit
Oh,
more?
sure. Yeah, we try to work with the business or property owners to get compliance. Once we issue a citation, then it goes to the court, and we lose kind of control. And a savvy person that's been cited, say like a lawyer, could really push these off and on and on and on. And once we've issued our citation, we can't just go back and issue another. They can run it through the courts for quite some time. So the goal is that they cooperate and do some, and then we don't have, we don't control what the court decision is and what if there's a judgment, what that would be.
Do we have any fees or fines or other levers that we pull for?
The fines would
businesses like
be
this?
established, would be set by the court. So I don't have like, if something, if something was in compliance with the building code, I don't have a flat fee. I have to take that to a court and they establish a fine. Does that
The
make sense?
citations are only stick.
Correct. If we have to get there, yes. But then I lose control of
Sure.
trying to coordinate.
Yeah. Do we have any carrots?
No, and that's a good question in terms of, I mean, there are other communities that provide like facade reimbursements or assistance in the process. We have other revenue sources that we control that we can waive in exchange, like a business license, things like that. Not something that would add up, but there are things that maybe we can, discuss and look at in the future.
Yeah.
Or there are other bigger redevelopment tools out there, not the term redevelopment to get rid of them, but that you could use funds that are generated from there to retrofit or improve.
Are there, yeah,
The problem with these is that these parcels are very small. They do not have a lot of depth.
Yeah,
So
it's too
what
shallow.
can be done with them? And this is the problem that we've talked about ad nauseum at this panel.
We talked about it when I was on council.
Yeah,
They're tough. They're hard.
I know, like, we haven't mentioned too much about 9270, but you take this picture before they just repainted. They've done that in the last few weeks.
Yes.
I mean, they're trying to.
Well,
get-
and
to
that
get
was
some-
again, trying to work with them
Yeah.
to get them they fixed a retaining wall, they fixed a fence and they painted. And all it is, I mean, it's just makeup. I mean,
the window's still boarded up.
Yeah,
And
and they're,
still tape and paper around one of the windows that was painted.
yeah.
Hey, now, I'll just paint a nice lot too.
Well, and aside from, I mean, well, the viability of the properties, it's going to remain difficult as, as long as these buildings are in the, position or in the care that they are. The Turek building has additional complications because its floor plan is divided in two. It's not one big floor plan. It was, built in the 50s to be more like two troughs on each side. The law office and the dentist, those are very small by, today's standards, and most law offices or dentists that would be in a building that small would be in their homes or in a multi-tenant building. So there's a cost benefit with, to be weighed with each one of these, and the development cost to raise it. I'm certain that people are looking for parcels to combine. And then that makes it even more difficult in adding more people to the discussion. So,
First of all, I think this is great because in my, I don't know, 5 years doing this or whatever. Yep. Oh, wow. More than 5 years doing this. I think having like a targeted list of properties that and we used to do in the past, and we have done it, but like now going to 9306 or 9318 and saying, okay, these are the tools we have. This is how we can bring in someone who might want to spend money to help redevelop the space because the dentist is retiring and the law offices are closing, as opposed to having it sit there and be a blight on our strip, because that's what's going to end up happening, right? Because it's not a turnkey, easy development. This is, I think, where this commission can be active in saying, okay, this is a bad sized property, Rod, right? It always has been. Becky, you're like, it's always been bad, but here's what we could do to bring in the right people to actually spend some money here.
Do we know that they're retiring?
No, I'm making that
No,
up.
I don't.
Yeah, he just made that.
I'm
up.
assuming based
I
on
thought
the
I thought I
facade of
missed
the building.
something. but
No.
I just wanted to clarify.
Or maybe they're not, or maybe they.
One of the
wait-
things is-
Maybe they're waiting for someone to knock on the door and say, hey, would you like to?
And it could
retire?"
be, well, we do not do this, but a lot of EDCs throughout the region, they do have larger budgets and they do purchase property.
Or the city's bought property.
Well,
in the
we
past.
do so under the auspices. of the city. Yes, the city, and I'm just sort of, functionally, that's maybe the way it would happen, but that's not really our edict here. With this commission, we could say, maybe we do buy it, but I don't know if that's really, like, make the recommendation, but, I
They're
don't
the
know,
ones to keep it.
we've done some analysis on city properties, trying to price those out, except.
Correct. And, this is, I'll advocate for my department. We got new council members in here, finally having I have a full staff, a full competent staff that we can focus on some broader things and some of these questions. We tried to tackle something like this before, but it were more about redevelopment as opposed to being proactive in terms of what existing properties in there. And I think this is an opportunity to bring that back and put that focus in there. Because these are coming in. Now, there's a couple of things that we've done to try to manage what happens in these. Like I can tell you right now, we get a lot of inquiries for adult daycare. Nothing wrong with adult daycare, but they do have a burden on services in there. There's a cost associated that isn't going to be made up by a business license, isn't going to be made up by a business taxes in there, but there is, services that they require that are utilize, us, whether it's through ambulance or other things like that. Our code restricts some from any of these parcels. So people that have called and inquired and said, yeah, but you need to have 80,000 square feet. None of these properties have 80,000 square feet. That 80,000 square feet was developed for a specific purpose in there. In the future, and these things are organic, they should be reevaluated all the time. If there is interest that the city needs some type of adult daycare facilities, then we should look at that 80,000 and adjust it or consider it on a case-by-case basis. At this point, we're in a position where, we are now trying to address these, but we're not under a pressure that something's coming in or
I take it these are owner operated,
for a majority, yes.
except for the 9270, which is vacant.
And so,
But it was previously owner occupied.
Yeah.
What is our objective in talking about this here?
I think our goal is to develop, one of the parts of the 5-year economic development plan was to develop, to utilize the resources of the EDC to look at how to either improve these properties or get these properties redeveloped, one or the other. And I don't mean redevelop to tear it down, but to get, what other type of users would be interested in getting those and to bring those back into investing in the structure itself or in the property itself.
Because actually, we've, under our auspices, we can recommend to the city that they use certain levers, the taxing districts, et cetera. I mean, this is a really small type of thing. It's actually really hard to figure out what to do because these parcels are so small. But, things like, when we sold the city hall, we had a discussion about, well, what is the property worth? Because, it was a public entity and it didn't actually generate any property tax. And, from a commercial standpoint, we had to kind of figure out how we could kind of horse trade with developers to say, we'll give you this if you do this. Other things, there's, with the bigger things like shops at Price Crossing, I came on right after that, but I know extensively how that worked out, especially over the long term with regards to tax abatements, that sort of thing. And currently the Gateway shops, well, the Yowitz's property, called Yowitz's property all the time. There's a number of incentives there. There's TIF money, which basically precludes the idea that there's going to be sales tax revenue, that sort of thing. So, but when you're dealing with something like this, it's really difficult to be creative and to find something to do with these things.
And are we trying to do something now, or are we trying to propose like, hey, owners, looks like might not be doing so?
I think for me, I'm kind of looking for guidance that, we're gonna, I don't want to say, we're gonna start making it known, that they need to do these improvements and take a more assertive approach in this, and that puts the potential that, they got to make some major decisions. And I don't know, in terms of, somebody had mentioned retirement, how long that Dennis has been there, or is that something under consideration, or it's a whole new young group or so. But I think from our end, we don't see them contributing to the character of our community. And I think they need to start doing some investments, whether they just started or they've been there forever. It's either, repairing the driveway, the deck, doing some landscaping.
I think there are investments. This is private owner property.
It is.
Privately owned property that the behemoth of government can't necessarily just go in and take it.
We still have code.
We do
Correct.
have, yeah. we
And I
do.
think
And-
starting
And
to tap
utilize
it.
the code or utilize some of the levers I'm talking about to, for incentives to do what they can, but it's for the size of these things and the usefulness of these structures, I'm at a loss. I mean, what really can be done?
Well, yeah,
I mean,
Not to.
a nice
we shouldn't
little
care,
ice
but
cream shop would be great
Yeah.
in one of these places.
fine, Bill.
Dispensary.
There we go.
But that's where this is.
Now,
This
we're
is-
doing,
this is
now
what
we're
would
doing some
trigger it.
business here. I like that.
And that's one of the things that I want to get some guidance on that discussion, because that's what it triggers. So let's say like the law offices, I think it's cute. It's a nice architecture. It's very simple and all that. Another attorney comes in, they go through an occupancy process, they do some improvements. A retailer or a confectioner goes in, it's not just a zoning thing. Now they have to bring ADA accessibility. They have to bring in the bathrooms, compliance. They have to level the floors, and we'll talk about one, later in there, but it opens up on the other things. It's easier. The easiest thing to happen here is to get another attorney that has the investments to put into the building, because anybody else is going to buy a property that it's going to be difficult to conform that structure to suit the needs, the ideal needs of that user. And then there are some other zoning things that come into play. An attorney's office may need just like 4 parking spaces, but an ice cream facility may need 8. And it goes back to, do we need to go look at our code? Do we need to provide flexibility in our code? Do we need to change our code? All these other things come into play.
Well,
The goal here is just to get those things going and be a little bit more proactive about it.
you're kind of, I understand exactly where you're going, and we're trying to be creative about this, but you also have to consider the idea behind spot zoning, which is
Yeah.
which is not something you really want to get involved with.
Correct.
I don't know, just bringing it up.
No, it's a good point.
I think, Cole, to answer your question, like in the past, we've been very reactive to
Yeah.
areas on the corridor, especially that were either vacant or dilapidated or undeveloped. Now, what I was saying initially is I'm
Yeah.
pleased that we're going to be potentially proactive, because maybe people have knocked on these folks' door and they're like, "Are you interested?" And they're like, "I am," and they don't know what toolkit we're ready to offer someone who's
Right.
just knocked on their door.
I think you're hitting on a
And-
really good.
And like, if we could sit with them and say, "We love that you're here. You have to be up to code. But if you're ready to leave, here's what the city is willing to do to help redevelop this space." And that will then fit with the strategic plan, and then everyone
Right.
is happy in the end.
Until they go, so we have a little more influence in the situation, yeah, makes sense. Cool.
Something I haven't heard, that the city does is a facade improvement program. And that is where you have, a certain amount of money that is delegated to businesses, or businesses apply for it. Where this revenue would come from, I just make the ideas.
Man,
But a facade improvement program would do the type of thing, if we are just talking about getting these things so that they look better on our primary corridor, that's the program for it.
And
You know,
that-
there are
agree.
street improvement programs put forth by the state. At least there used to be, because I know that the city, like 20, 25 years ago, turned down. No,
Well, there's-
no, actually,
I was there.
after your tenure,
Okay, well, that's
the,
less.
yes, and they actually turned it down thinking, well, for whatever reason. I don't want to, get into their brains, but, it just, certain things were not necessarily followed up on for whatever reason, but there are areas like that which, yeah, and that's basically curbing, street lights, sidewalks, that sort of thing. So that's more infrastructure based rather than specific to to a business. But I don't know how flexible those programs are and if they still exist.
Well, and to Dawn's point about the facade, whatever you called that great idea you just had, there's gotta be a grant somewhere you could apply for
Well,
that
yeah.
with, right?
I think
Bringing
that's
this up, I'm just saying,
Right.
trying to figure out where the money's coming
Right,
from.
that's what I'm saying. So
Like,
there's gotta be some
university.
grant we could apply for that.
In University City, if you've gone east of the Costco development, you've seen a lot of interior tenants doing improvements. Some of that money from the big TIF is going into providing a fund to do facade improvements along, east.
Eastway East.
Mhm.
That's a great idea.
And whether that's triggered, I mean, and you could say whether it looks nice or not, but there's been people investing on the exteriors of their buildings all the way up to where Pete's used to be, I guess, north and south and all that.
And the improvement or facade improvement that relates to the business, or one great outlet, awnings, signage, things like that, that are usually, applicable expenses for facade improvement program funds. We don't have, anything like that here, so we would have to write it and the rules to go along with it. It would be a decent solution for a lot of these things. We don't have the Great Streets Initiative, that the state has done or does. That is a really kind of a difficult, like, to get that grant, to get a designated a great street. But there are definitely, funding sources that we haven't even looked at. If that's something, that you want us to pursue, if that's, I don't know, trying to get some direction.
I
on it.
think those are
That
really
makes sense.
positive moves that would be way better than fix your stuff or we're kicking you out.
Yeah.
So if there are, I mean, I always look to you professional folks to say, well, what are our options that are available to us? Tell us what we can recommend. I don't even know. I wouldn't even know where to start. So
Exactly.
I would recommend that you guys could tell us what our options are to like we have facade things that other cities do. And then we could send that to you guys.
Absolutely. The other sites, as we go down the corridor on the next slide, in more of a modern ABC trading.
The steamship.
Yes, and
Is it the
it is, yes.
But the
Now,
building is for
they've
sale.
been up for sale for 5 years.
The building is for sale though, not the business.
Correct. Well, I think they've been wanting to retire, but just have not had
Got
the
it.
sell that they've wanted in there. And there's a couple of complexities and it's a unique interior.
Mm-hmm.
It's very specific to what they were doing and how it worked for them and the limited space. They did that addition, I think, in 2008, the upper level. And it's a strange elevator, but their offices were up there to kind of open up some of the lower room, and their storage is just all over the place in there. It's really tight. But they're a great retailer. I mean,
Yeah, they are.
and
They
they're-
sell a ton.
the access is very difficult on all of it's right across from the Mercy Sylvan Center, and you have multiple entrances. And the kicker is they're not allowed access onto Olivet Executive Parkway because that's a private street, and that's why that chain is is set in there. And it just makes, it just kind of, compounds on the problems for that. The great location, Olive Boulevard, corner property, Olive Boulevard. But they've had difficulties getting tenants in there. We've had inquiries like more like on personal services to look into that site. But I think in the end, making it work is difficult for what.
And does a personal services company follow our plan? I mean, don't we want more
I mean,
consumer-oriented businesses on the corridor?
but if it was a gym
Okay.
or some type of a thing, but they would weigh heavily on their membership and their membership fees to pay that off, and that's where the bigger risk come in. Next one is the next two, Enchanted Bride at the upper left, and then at the lower right is the former Hanger prosthetics facility. Enchanted Bride, I've posted that property that it's no longer occupiable and open to the public. Now,
It's not?
correct. Working with the owners, they are retiring, and she was retiring, so we knew that in advance. We knew that we had some issues there, and we knew they were coming to a close in there. The owner operator is looking to try to salvage that building and create something in there, but I think it's unfortunately the building is really in bad shape.
Lived its life.
in there. Yeah, and
definitely
it's a
lived
great
its life.
place, and they're the sweetest couple. And they should be wrapping up, I think, by tomorrow. And then slowly vacating
Well,
what they have in there.
from what I understand, they had a thriving business for a lot of years.
Yeah,
She's
it's a
very impressive,
great
and she's
business.
got pictures of people that have worn her gowns and all that in there, and it was a hard, emotional day to go in there and to kind of talk about how to wrap this up. That was saving face for is best for them in that process. The problem with this parcel, well, that the building, there's it looks like it was added on. So there's multi-level, so it's not very accessible. They had a lot of electrical issues, some plumbing issues, and that's why we got to this point that we were at. And there it was, I guess, partially once a house and the storefront or something like that, but it was not in the best of shape. And there, she said, majority of her was now going to her clients as opposed to there. That mostly just the sewing took place in there. But the other difficult part is there's no expansion opportunities on the parcel, because right behind them, immediately to your right is the Olive Point, and there's about a 10-foot grade drop. So it's not like they could be acquired or integrated with another development. And then they're at a corner of a residential street and Olive Boulevard. And then they're in that part of Olive Boulevard where you have that curve, and it's just hard to get in and out in there. Same with Hanger Prosthetics. They were one of our big sales tax generators in there, but they vacated. We just kind of found out about it, by
When
Don's
they
route
closed.
home, that all of a sudden they were done in there. So again, we're trying to get a little bit more in front of these and to identify issues. I couldn't tell you there's issues with the building or Hanger was consolidating or what.
There's a, I think a 4-acre parcel right by, is it adjacent to that hangar?
Well,
Which is it's the entry, the 4-acre parcel, I believe, is adjacent to the street, which goes to Old Bonham Village. Is that correct?
no, they're two down.
Okay.
So
there's no
at
plan
at the signal light of Old Bonham and Olive, you have the big parking lot.
Right.
Then you have the building that's right there to the right, that has a sign company and Ventec. And then it's Hanger.
Oh, that's right. Hangar
And then
Building.
it's
Left of
the-
the apartment.
Sign company.
And then
right,
it's
so
a daycare facility that's run by the Lutheran Church.
Mhm.
The unique thing about these is you got these beautiful parcels that are over 400 deep, 400 feet deep, so, very deep, but they're only like 100, 150 feet wide. And they're you know, outside of this, maybe these two buildings kind of have some cross access. But to get to the parking lot, on the other side, you have to go out into Olive to get back into the parcel.
Oh,
Same with
perfect.
with the Lutheran church. So,
How much, if any, sway does the city have to increase that cross-traffic access? Because that's a problem for lots of parcels.
correct.
along Olive.
When an opportunity presents itself that they need like some approval from the city beyond just the permit or an occupancy, we take advantage of that. So we have, I think I have like over 12 cross-access easements that we've acquired
Mhm.
over time because they had to go for a rezoning, they had to go to get a special permit, or they were getting redeveloped in there. So in this case, we know that these two parcels share. If another retailer were to go in there, I don't have the same teeth I would unless the retailer requires a special permit. So let's say if it becomes a hardware store would require a special permit. Then that is something that we can request as part of the negotiations and and the approval because it helps meet our goals and objectives in the comprehensive plan in there. But if it's just a general retailer, they would just be going to get an occupancy permit and an inspection, meaning that, that when they get viewed, they got to do some site cleanup, some painting, and some other improvements on there. But to tell them that they have to give us an easement, I don't think that there's enough correlation between the approval that they need and the request for that. If they have to go to the commission or council, then that puts me in a different position. Is that kind of?
Yeah, I mean, I was kind of thinking along the lines of the Olive Corridor Plan. I'm not sure the exact name, but where, kind of identifying ways that we can reduce
Yes.
curb cuts and, limit all of the different entrances and exits onto Olive. And if there are strategic ways that we can say, okay, these 5 parcels, we want to focus our efforts on, like, these are our big trouble spots. And so we want to focus our efforts and find creative ways, again, to work with businesses or to help make
Correct.
that happen.
So one of the things I always look at is like, again, if somebody comes in that is comparable or compatible to what was going on there before, so you get another retailer, and there are some gray areas too that goes in. It puts the city just as a like, I don't know what the right word would be, but just as a part of the step of getting in. When something unique comes in where they need to go to, they need some type of approval to the city, it puts us in the table, it gives us a chair in the table. That plan that we have for the Olive Corridor is something we use because we have already planned that out. So as you go through that, it tells us where these are supposed to be, so they're coordinated in there. But it also puts us in a position, it's like, we didn't just make this up. These are long-term goals or objectives. And if we get a seat at the table because you need us to get this going, then this is what we're asking in return. And again, it's not always, monetary or like we're doing it. It becomes part of the approval process, because we have already thought that out and it's in place, in there. And that's a good example where we do have that shown that we would like this parcel to be able to access the signal, to get access to that signal. It would help and improve both their, access by their patrons and also for the community. So, and we have that, Enchanted Bride is unique because there was no opportunity outside of lining maybe directly with the post office. But if you go back to, go back 2 slides, Don, or I think, yeah. So so here, I mean, when the child daycare operator came in, they know that our long-term goal is to be able to coordinate all these 3 buildings together somehow, so you don't have to go out to Olive. And we had a long discussion that when our ambulance or pumper truck has to go in there, they need a way to, they just can't back up easily. And we
Mhm.
need to create or establish a way where they come into the access. Now, we did push them in there, but we have a feeling that something's going to happen here, and that we put in place that when that does happen, we have an easement agreement on their parcel to do a connection. We didn't make them do the connection because we didn't want to disrupt anyone that wasn't doing anything at the time.
Yeah.
In there. And whether that was the best bet or not, that was a decision we decided at that time.
You're
So-
speaking specifically of 9270.
The 9306. 9270,
9306.
we acquired an easement when they developed the shops at Price Crossing. We acquired an easement from Mr. Yowitz, who was the developer of that. So the legal framework that if we get a tenant in here, we could make that request to connect to the shops.
Okay. Okay.
So, and again, I appreciate the discussion. I didn't know where this was going to go, but I think we're trying to kind of change, what we've done in the past. And then also really, I mean, you guys have been, to tap into, your guys' expertise and assistance in the process. And as you look at the 5-year communication, the communications plan, not a 5-year plan, outreach, you guys outreach, or if you guys are clients or know somebody, to have them to talk to us or to talk to them in there and make that, start putting things out. So.
And I didn't create a slide on the business communications plan, but that is in all your packets. Everybody's been reaching out to businesses, right? Right? Yeah.
And it's.
271.
Yeah.
Right. Knocking on doors.
David's hit the first 100.
Well,
Everybody?
we can help with
Maybe
providing
Or breakfast.
locations
We could-
and, if there is a way that we can help provide an in, or that, if we can accompany you, if you're wanting, to talk to a business, or if you have an in with a business that, you can introduce us to them, preferably, it'd be great. Yeah.
With that business communication plan, is there, other than us just kind of sending you an email, hey, I talked to this business, is there I wouldn't say more formalized process, but perhaps a streamlined process? What I'm thinking about specifically is something that the Parks Commission just recently put in place, and that's when park commissioners visit a park. They just go up onto the Google form and enter in what park they visited, and there's a few check boxes to say, like what people were doing in the parks, and then to provide whatever feedback. Very quick 2-minute thing that then Beverly has access to say, oh, here's some of the feedback that's coming from the parks. And is still in its early phases, but I wonder if something like that might be helpful.
Yeah, I think the communication plan, I think that's one of Kiana's probably top 5 contributions to the city in there. And it organized those questions, of what questions to ask in there. It didn't go into the aspects of codification or how we get that together. So we've had discussions here, the EDC members would just, in their time or between meetings, at least venture to meet with one business and then ask these specific questions. I think we haven't gotten to the point to organize that, or how we're collecting that data. We usually talk about it and such, and then maybe even looking at the format that the Parks is doing of creating that electronically in there is something we can look into. And I mean, Don has the software capabilities and
Yeah.
We have form, and I know I've done it a couple times, filled, talked to a few people, filled out a few forms, but it's like, again, the kind of data you get talking to someone. Sometimes it turns into a gripe session. Sometimes it's just, oh, you guys are great. It's wonderful. It's, that sort of stuff. So you get kind of the gamut. Difficult to hit check box, but we could try. I mean, I think that'd be great if we could do that.
I think we did come up with like 3 questions.
So, yeah,
Yeah,
Just
it-
3
they're-
questions.
Yeah.
And
So
they're
you
in
could
the-
leave it open-ended,
the-
just fill in, which we should do it, and then we should review it every meeting, like, pull up the Google Doc. Okay, oh yeah, you went and talked to 314 Sports Cards, David, again.
Yes,
How
we
about
can do
that?
it.
No, he doesn't have soccer cards right now. Okay, I don't know why that's important to council, but okay.
No, but a survey or, you know, an electronic form to capture that is absolutely something we can do with ArcGIS. Not a problem. Like, there's different ways to just do buttons, you know. But also I know that kind of what Rod's alluding to, that it can be very long form, you know,
I would say
response.
short is better.
Yeah.
I hit the custom foam guy and was like, we had a long conversation
Yeah, so,
Long
I,
conversation. Someone-
with the, yeah. Actually, no, I did. I don't know if they did with me though.
Go to the grocery store if I run into Rod, it's a 3-hour trip.
but putting those questions
Well,
into
we're only
the
in
form,
for only
not a problem.
an hour and 44 minutes so far, so. we're doing
It says
pretty good.
thank you here, so that usually means.
I know,
so-
that's, I hear it, I saw that, yeah.
I like thank you.
All right, well, good. I think we've come to some ideas here. Look into the GIS or whatever you call it, your TLA, your 3-letter acronym. And we'll see what you can come up with late next time. Moving right along. Meeting minutes, we have none, so we'll skip over that. And city reports, city staff reports.
Uh,
Is there anything to report?
Just a couple of things. If you guys have any questions on the developments or development activities, let me know.
I have a question about the development.
Absolutely.
activity. I would love to know what's being developed with the development.
Okay.
So
So
yeah,
our-
which property specifically?
the
where-
Olive Crossing. So lot 3 is well under its way. The footing foundation is in place. They should be pouring the floors and steel should be coming in by next week. In there, that lot 3 will contain both the Paris baguette and the brass tap. And I believe there's a smoothie concept that will be
Wait,
one
go
of the
back, go back, go back,
interior
go back.
tenants.
There,
That's it.
where are you talking about? This? Okay. Yeah, that's what's under construction right now.
Yeah, that.
Okay.
that-
Both of those are under construction?
No, that's an old
Just
slide.
one of
I'm
them,
not
right?
sure.
Yeah, it's just one of them.
And they're now, the developer had a benchmark that he was required to meet this year. He went to council in there to get that extended. He had to, I believe, meet substantial construction by the end of the year in there, and that was not going to happen, and asked the commission, the council for an extension. The council did grant an extension in there. At the same time, there was some deadlines put on lot 3 in there. That's the one that's under construction. The hotel component has to be submitted or initiate commission review by September 1st. And then the office component is something that's still kind of up in the air, but he has, I believe, 2 years to figure out what he's going to do if the market changes or come up with an alternative.
2 years
From, I believe that was in April.
okay, because our last meeting was March 30th.
Right, so the
Okay,
next.
because he came and talked to us about changes in the wind, that sort of thing, with
Correct.
regards to office on,
The office.
off. I've talked with him and he's saying, yeah, things are in the works. I really can't say anything about it, which is kind of par for the
Developer
course. Developer speak, right? But nothing concrete has come through the city on your end then, with regards to which direction it's gonna go with the office building.
Correct. Correct. I don't think that there's been a decision yet on whether he's going to come up with an alternative
Well,
or
I will say
maintain
this,
the status quo.
I will say this, in talking with him and knowing what's going on with the city, knowing what's going on with commercial development and office buildings everywhere because of changes with COVID, et
Mhm.
cetera, providing him the flexibility is important. We'd like to see it done, but we have tried to redevelop this piece of property since the 1960s. just make that point.
Yes. There are some things, I think we're getting closer, and there, I'd be glad to see the hotel up. If he sticks to that schedule, then by 2027, the hotel will be up and running. Hopefully we'll have an idea what's happening with the office component.
And with
in there.
part of the, like, I understand the branding has changed with the hotel.
It's still, part of the Marriott brand, but I think it's just a Courtyard.
I,
of a what?
well, it was a dual before. I forget what the other, Marriott and something else
Window.
No,
could have been.
No, I can't.
But I'm not unclear, but the parking garage was part and parcel for the
That is
hotel
correct.
and part and parcel for the office. So that's kind of up in the air too. So that's a piece of the hotel we don't know about.
correct. Well, we'll find out,
Right.
by September, I hope, in
That's
there.
kind of going to force his hand somewhat by pushing the hotel
Yes.
it'll push the.
Some
push his hand with
decisions
the-
are going to be necessary to
Right.
get the parking,
Right,
aligned.
right.
Could I make a request for our next EDC? Dawn, could you or Carlos present to the group a summary of the Olivia Village? What's it called? Olaya Village?
Olio.
Olio
Oh,
Village?
the
Mhm.
former Monsanto property. Yeah.
got
Yeah.
I believe it's confirmed it's gonna be $1 billion development.
So there was actually a coffee with the mayor,
Oh,
on it.
our mayor or their mayor?
Yeah,
Our mayor did a coffee on their property?
yeah.
Oh,
Well, I mean, and it will affect us.
yes, dramatically. And it will affect the Yowitz property, I'm guessing. Because there's office and hotel and everything that we want going in right there.
Nice.
So if you can.
No, definitely.
Whatever was presented at that,
But I don't necessarily think it's bad though.
I didn't say it was bad. I'm saying that I bet that's gonna be up before ours gets up.
It's actually on our YouTube channel,
Oh,
so you should be able to watch it.
Subscribe and
Coffee
like.
with the mayor.
okay.
We can get that.
And actually, one thing I mentioned before, if there are things like Coffee with the Mayor or things that the city is doing that you think may be the slightest bit interested, like have the EDC members interested, it'd be good to have just a reminder out there.
The nudge.
Yeah.
Well, in November, there's a great one for the turkey trot that I encourage you to attend.
I
Gripping
I'm gonna be
presentation.
on the shirt this year.
Yes, you are gonna be on the shirt this year.
I did send out a list of events,
you check?
in one of our recent emails. I also cover upcoming events, and always cover Coffee with the Mayor, in this slide every time. But, our social media and our, little notifications are the best way. I don't want to be the only person that you get your information from as far as like what's coming
Sure.
up.
But when we get it from you, we know it's important.
Uh-huh. Yeah, that's how you knew it was in that email. So that email. Our upcoming events, the next PCDC meeting was canceled, for the July 4th holiday, next Coffee with the Mayor. I'm not sure what the, subject for that one in July is.
It's,
Republic Services.
Oh, Republic Services. There you go.
No.
Oh, that's right.
She is in the know.
Sydney.
Yeah, Cindy Clark is our mayor, and Mayor Clark has moved the Coffee with the Mayors to 8:30. So they are at 8:30 at 5 Oaks on Morrison, unless they have a special
When is that?
space. 8:45. It's not a big change, but for people
That's a
like
deal
me,
breaker.
we're 15 minutes late. And I don't normally throw park stuff on there, but I did see that there's a throwback skate.
That's really fun, by the way.
Yeah, there's a kid skate and an adult skate.
In what building?
2 different times. It's at 5 Oaks on Morrison.
In the parking lot?
No,
In the gym?
in the
Wow.
gym.
Roller skates?
They're bringing in a floor
Oh, Jesus.
Really?
They're, actually, no, they're not bringing in a floor, but they are bringing in like roller skating rentals.
Oh, okay.
So.
Oh, wow.
Special scale.
Oh, that sounds,
Seats, exactly,
For our
so that it does not damage our
Our
floor,
floor, got it.
exactly.
how much fun?
That is fun.
Are you gonna,
And it's
bring the element that got
$50
Saints closed?
To, I think to attend, but,
Oh, what'd you say?
I mean, it's a small, you know, fee to attend. So,
I'm going.
yeah, it
It
sounded
should be
pretty fun. Yeah.
Easy.
So,
Do you have to be a resident to come?
no,
It's $10.
no.
Just checking.
I think that there's a slightly higher charge if
If
you
you're
are,
not a resident.
yeah, or it's on membership, where if you have a membership, then it's discount. And I'm not sure. If there's
great.
like, just because, you know, if you're a resident.
Okay.
Or if you have to be a member.
Okay,
Yeah.
council liaison report.
Yes,
You're on the spot now for your first official report.
I was going through real quick because there was the question about the timing for the, Olive Crossing development. And the question about the, business. What is the word? Building where office building.
Place of work.
Oh, no, yes.
Good.
Office building, that whether it's going to stay an office building or become something else.
Right.
A site plan is now supposed to be, submitted, July 31st, 2026. And that's when he will notify the council on what the plans
Mhm.
are.
So are you saying they completely scrapped the office building part of the
No,
plan?
no,
Oh.
he has to notify the council
he's
which
got a
way
year.
he's going to go.
Got it.
Whether it's
In a-
office
in a
building
year.
or it's retail, he has to notify one way or the other.
Okay.
That was not on our last meeting, but just for your information, because we did have to do an extension to the substantial completion date, which took place at what date was that? Not the 24th meeting that we had, but the earlier one in June, if you did want to go back and read what that entails. So at the most recent meeting, we updated or approved the updating of our building codes, which is great. So we're now up at 2021 by the recommendation of the planning department. Yep. And then we finalized and approved the budget, which was a long time in coming, especially with basically 3 new council members. We did a lot of work sessions teaching us and going over the details of the budget. We are in a deficit, and we are looking at being not in compliance with our reserve policy. And as a result of that, our reserve policy is a 5-year
Rolling.
long-term thing. As a result of that, the council asked that the city manager and the business director, Mr. Mann, come back to us in 6 months with a plan to get us back into compliance.
How far out of compliance are we?
So it's not until 5 years that we're out of compliance, and it's an unusual thing, and I don't want to speak too much on it because I'm still learning very much about how this works. So it's a certain percentage of our reserves that we have to have in reserve, 50% of what the total budget is for that year.
Got it. Let me ask you this.
Yes.
Are we over our budget or are we under our target? Like, are we not generating enough revenue or are we spending too much money right now? Or
Like-
both?
Yes.
Oh,
Okay.
That's interesting.
Revenues changed significantly. As
because of enterprise? Is this the
increasing,
That because of it?
yes.
enterprise used to book all of their fleet sales through
Mhm.
Olivet somehow? And it was like a massive windfall of revenue. And
And
then
part
they
of it
moved.
too is that the Olive Crossing development has been so slow
Mhm.
that we are not seeing the sales tax revenues that we were hoping to see because things have not progressed at the rate that was expected.
So you're saying, like, I know a little bit about how the budget works. When you say deficit, everybody's gets kind of crazy. But we're not actually, well, I don't want to say too much about it, but sometimes the word deficit with regards to municipal budget is not like like everybody has, you know,
Yeah, it's not-
federal
it's not the-
deficits on their mind.
It's not
But-
the end of the
but-
world.
But basically, you say 5 years, so it's a projected deficit.
So our expenditures are higher than our revenues this year.
And you have
So-
a fund which you're dipping into, but it's, you're,
through our reserves. And the
Right.
reserve, it's the amount of money in the reserves, which is, please do not quote me on this, but it is, I think, in the area of 6 to 8 million is in our reserves.
Mhm.
And it's a 5-year projection.
Right.
If we continue to draw down the reserves at this pace, where does it put us in 5 years?
Mhm.
Now, from what I understand from Mr. Manet, I really don't want to get, please talk to him about this. Don't talk to me about this. Because
Still
again,
learning.
like I said, still learning. We are an unusual city in that we have a 5-year reserve policy. Typically, cities have 10-year reserve policies. And at some point, the 5-year reserve policy was put into place. It's a much more conservative measure. The reality is it's in place. And when we enter a phase like we are now, where we are not in compliance with the reserve policy, it triggers a response that the council is now acting on that says we need to plan for how to turn this around. So that's where the council is now.
Kate, I thought that was very well explained.
You did a great job, Kate.
For someone who just joined council, so well done.
Maybe we'll send the recording to Darren and see
Yeah, yeah.
if he agrees that I explained it well or not, but that is my
Hmm.
understanding.
Good job.
My understanding.
Hmm.
So yes, so then we also just went through our capital improvements that scan up until 2035, our capital improvement plan. So these are long-term plans for things that are big ticket items. And approved those and I think that was about it. Oh, the one thing to point out to you, if you have not seen it on social media, is that MoDOT is requesting feedback right now for a small corner on Old Bonham and Olive. So that curve coming east on down Olive, if you're gonna turn into Old Bonham. You know the curve, if you.
The worst
taken it
curve of all
so
time.
To repave that.
And it's filled with potholes, that one?
It's problematic for a number of reasons, and MoDOT is wanting to acquire land on that corner. What's very tricky about that corner is that land belongs to St. Louis City,
Right.
because of the Stacy Park Reservoir.
Mm.
Regardless, they are taking feedback right now, and I encourage you.
Where are
all
they taking this
to-
feedback?
Well, you-
Cause I have some feedback, that
Yes.
pothole.
Yeah, they need to fix
Um,
the damn street.
Well, there are plans for paving, Olive, and it's coming. I do not know the timeline on that.
This year?
Carlos says
All the way from
late
this
summer,
270
early
all the
fall.
way to 170, right?
No, because up to Taco Bell is where the asphalt changes to concrete, right by
Oh,
Dealman
okay,
Industrial.
close enough for me.
Yeah, well, I just, there is, didn't want the wrong
Well, actually,
impression.
that was basically redone, yeah, during the widening of the, yeah. Okay.
And you can submit your feedback on MoDOT potholes and submit pothole data as much as you'd like to on their
I
website.
will do
Okay,
this.
I'm doing it.
And please, they will call you.
I don't
Call
want,
Dash
I don't
call
want
and
a phone
call
call.
them.
Put Rod's number down.
So, and I'll find
Yeah,
that
can't be an
where
answer.
that specific feedback site is.
No, I'll look it up. It's all right.
that-
But I love that that might happen. It's wonderful.
All right,
Cool.
thank you.
Right, then commissioner reports, I guess. What are commissioner reports? What do we do?
Since when do we have a?
That is reports. We already,
Or did
Done.
that? Okay, good.
yeah.
Well,
Awesome.
with that, if there's nothing more, questions, comments, concerns?
Remember the August 25th date, that would be done, noting that.
Next meeting?
So,
In the calendar.
With that,
Does that mean we're,
I move for adjournment.
we're gonna vote on this?
No.
A second?
oh, you
Second, you
don't.
wanna do
Yes,
it?
second.
Okay,
yes,
second, all in favor?
absolutely. I wanna go.
Aye. I do declare we are closed.
You guys.
August 25th is our next meeting.
We never usually.
Thank you.
No, we just. yeah.
That
By the
both-
time we.
So then are we on
Put it
that
in.
every other? Because we skipped June, so now we're just on every other as of now.
Well, so, and that was